Welcome in, everyone, to the Barking Browns. I hope you're having a sensational Saturday night. I am your host, Casey Kenneman, and this is Know Your Enemy, the podcast where we do a deep dive and break down the Browns' upcoming opponent. As always, we're brought to you by our friends over at SeatGeek. You guys know the drill. Head over to SeatGeek, punch in that code Barking Browns, and save yourself $20 off your first order. Okay, so I get it. You might not want to go see the Browns the rest of the season. I respect it. But the Cavs are playing. And if not, you get August 10th. I think the Foo Fighters and Queens of the Stone Age are coming to Huntington Bank Field. So use your money on that. Save that $20, buy yourself a beer or two. I think that it'd be worth it for yourself. So here we are, week 10. The Browns are coming off the bye. And vibes they're atrocious. There's no other way to put it. But we're playing a team with similar vibes, a similar thing. But the trajectories are different based on the things that happened this week. So we got to talk about it. We're going to take on the Jets. So I had to find a guy that could break all this down for us. So without further ado, I'm going to bring him on. This man is an NFL draft analyst, and he is a die-hard New York Jets fan. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Anthony Russo.
Hello. Thank you for having me. You know, you asked me what my intro should be, and I did sign off on die-hard Jets fan, but maybe the die-hard is not as strong these days. Yeah. But no, pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you making the time. Welcome to the party. Misery loves company, so I think that this could be a cathartic exercise for the Browns fans to actually hear what's going on behind the enemy lines with a team that's facing kind of similar outcomes. Normally when we start this podcast, I do what I call a vibe check. But let's just elephant in the room, man. The New York Jets this week did something I have never seen on a trade deadline. So let's start there. Let's start with the trade that took place, or the multiple trades that took place this week, and where you sit at with it.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's, you sort of, I think, have to respect the decision and the commitment from GM Darren Muji and Coach Aaron Glenn, who have basically decided that the Jets, as they were not good enough to win football games at a high level, and they've decided that they're going to move on from guys that have defined the Jets, in the Douglas Saleh era. They're going to move on, and they're investing fully in between this upcoming draft and 2027. They're going to get the guys that they want to get and build the roster they want to build, and obviously time will tell if they're able to do it, but I am actually excited for the decisions that were made, because look, this, the team has one win on the year. They're not a good football team with these very talented. Quinnen is a great player. Sauce Gardner is I still think a great player, but they had one win this whole season. They weren't winning football games. There are plenty of other issues on this team that need to be addressed. So the decision, I'm behind the decision and behind the thought process. It now just comes down to, how they're going to finish out the season, and then what they do with the draft capital and the cap space and all that stuff as the years go on here.
I got to give Muji some props here. Typically when I talk about trading superstars, I think in season is a terrible time to do it. Typically you want to do it during the draft, because then you know what exactly assets you are getting instead of this thing for the future. And typically if you just look at Micah Parsons, when they moved him, if you'd moved him during the draft, I think you get a much bigger haul than what they ended up getting out of Green Bay. But I'm going to say it right now, man, 2 firsts for Sauce Gardner. I think the Colts overspent. I think Sauce is a very good cornerback, but 2 firsts, we don't have to think too far back, and teams weren't willing to give 2 firsts for Lamar Jackson just 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. To get 2 firsts for Sauce Gardner, I think I got to give him his flowers on that, man. I think he got proper value for both those players. So let's put your NFL draft analyst hat on. With those picks, what are you trying to walk away with this year?
I mean, this is going to be the debate for the next however many months we are now from the draft.
I think we're 118 days.
Yeah, it's something like that. But yeah, do you take a quarterback this year and then use your other first, and they'll probably wind up with 2 picks in the top 35 or whatever, besides their top 5 pick that they'll likely have. So, if you're able to get a Fernando Mendoza or Ty Simpson or Dante Moore and then use those picks to build around him, or do they decide, 2027 is shaping up to be a hell of a quarterback class. We'll punt to next year and we'll use the first round picks this year and the early day 2 picks to sort of do what the Jets did in 2022 when they took Garrett Wilson and Sauce and Jermaine Johnson in the first round. So, that's that's the debate for the next few months. If it were up to me right now, if I'm in a position to get a quarterback that I want to build my franchise around, which for me is Fernando Mendoza is my guy at QB1, I would take him and then just invest every draft pick I have into helping him between this year and next year. But when you have 3 first-round picks in 2027 already, you've basically set yourself up to get the guy you want. And that I do think is like smart asset management from Muji to be able to basically say whoever we want, we're likely going to get.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Is that of the quarterbacks available this year, would there be any that you would be willing to go this year on and not go into 27? Because we do this in the NFL community, man. We always next year's NFL quarterback class is going to be wild. And then it doesn't matter. I don't care if it was before Caleb. We knew a year ahead of time for Caleb Williams. But as it gets close, you're going to poke holes in it. It's just the nature of the business. So out of these quarterbacks this year, Mendoza would be your pick?
Yeah, well, and keep in mind, too, we literally just did that with this class. Like, we came into the year, Cade Klubnik, great. Garrett Nussmeier, great. Drew Aller, great. None of them are going. Lenore Sellers, great. He probably goes back to school. The other 3 aren't going to be top 50 picks. So, like, it's every year I am starting to be wary of, like, okay, is this supposed to be the generational class? Is it next year? Oh, now it's not. Well, now you're screwed. So if Fernando Mendoza, and we'll see where the Jets wind up picking, because like now it's sort of a race between the Saints and the Jets and Miami, I think for first overall pick.
I'll put our hand up as well.
You're in it, but I will say I think those 3 teams are actually worse off. So I'll give Cleveland has something going for it. But we'll see. We'll see where they wind up in the draft order and. Time will tell, but I am comfortable with Mendoza being the guy right now. The other ones, I'm still, if they even come out, they could also just stay in school, like Simpson and Dante Moore and Sellers and them. But I'm not. But yeah, Mendoza's the one I would be comfortable with right now.
All right. Well, let's transition. Let's move off the trades. We'll circle back a little later for another defensive question. But what's the Aaron Glenn experience been like? We're right at the beginning of it. So what's your initial take on how Aaron Glenn's handling his new position as head coach?
Yeah. So look, I mean, it's hard to say it's not been negative, and I don't want to say that that's all his fault. It sort of just feels like he is out of touch with where the Jets fan base is in terms of just where they are mentally and emotionally. We had Robert Saleh, and he was a defensive he was supposed to be the CEO, right? He was supposed to be the leader of the whole locker room, come in and also be this great defensive mind, but can sort of just build a staff around him, and he could be the sort of the Dan Campbell, but like a defensive mind as well. Yeah. And that did not work, clearly. And so now Aaron Glenn comes in and, obviously has a different style and a different, defensive scheme and things like that. But more or less, it's very similar vibes to that. Like, defensive mind, literally came from under Dan Campbell in Detroit. And now he's trying to, and he's very much came in and has been hands off in terms of, he brought in Steve Wilkes to lead the defense, brought in Tanner Engstrand to lead the offense, and he was going to be the CEO, the decision maker, the final say guy. And we've already seen multiple times this year where just like questionable decisions in game and questionable clock management. One thing that's really turned me off is how he's dealt with the media, and I know New York media can be annoying and tough to deal with. I fully understand that, especially for a first time head coach. But like the way that he handled when Justin Fields was trash in the London game and basically questioned like the audacity to bench him and to say that he wouldn't be the starter from one of the reporters that asked, and then literally was benched the next week. Like, I don't understand why are we like picking fights? Excuse me. Why are we picking fights with the media when this team is struggling? So again, I don't think it's all his fault. I think he was dealt a very bad hand, and clearly now we've seen with these trades, like this roster, they weren't all in on it. But even for a one-win team, I would have wanted to see more positive signs, and I'm sure we'll get into like the actual play on the field more. But overall, I'm disappointed, but I'm still somewhat hopeful that we could see more from the Jets, even with the moves that they've made.
Yeah, him being combative with the media is like he's an aggressive guy, defensive mind, like you said. But he played in New York. He knew what he was getting into. You know what I mean? And if you're going to be combative, I don't know if that's the market to do that. You might be able to get away with that in some other markets. So this is just me from the outside looking in. And typically in the NFL, when you get an offensive head coach, you're really just getting in. You're just really buying into the scheme of them. That's what they usually just bring the scheme. The defensive coaches that come in, they're usually quicker to like instill a culture. Like that's usually the vibe, you know what I mean? So have you noticed any of this? Is there been a culture shift within the Jets?
Well, no, and if there has, it hasn't been a good one. I mean, I do think, I will say, I think players are bought in. Like I think players support Glenn and support him as their head coach. I don't think like he's lost the locker room or anything like that. But it does just feel like every single week without fail, he'll tell you that it was a great week of practice, and we've really we're ready to play and all that, and then multiple times just it's not even because like listen, I can handle losing. Like I've seen some bad Jets teams in my life, and I can accept when a team just isn't good enough to win football games consistently. Not every team is going to win 12 games. I get that. But when you come out and like Miami washes you and you can't even put up a touchdown in multiple games that you play this year, but then you just told me, oh yeah, practice was great. Everything's great. We're so great. And then you come out after the game, it's like, well, we didn't execute and we didn't, we just weren't able to find a rhythm, and we have to play better. It's like, well, isn't that what practice is for? Like, it always just feels like there's a disconnect between what you tell me on Thursday and Friday and what you tell me Sunday afternoon. So, so that's my issue. Like, I think players like him. He, as you said, he is a former player and a former Jet. I liked what he. I don't know if you saw, there was a video of him talking to the guys about Nick Mangold and what he meant to the organization. So, like, he clearly cares about the team, and he clearly cares about the New York Jets, and I appreciate that. But, at the end of the day, like, I'm sure Gerard Mayo cared a lot about the Patriots and cared a lot about the organization. But if we're getting similar results to that, it's hard for me to be excited about the future of the Jets, even with all these draft picks, if I'm wondering what we're going to get out of our head coach.
Yeah, you might have struck a nerve there for a second when you talk about the math not mathing, when you hear all these things during the week and all this good speak, and then you see the end product on Sunday, and it's like, none of that adds up, man. Like you got a good week of practice, and then you see the disjointedness on game day. Well, you said his name earlier, so we might as well jump into it. Steve Wilks. Browns fans are very familiar with Steve Wilks. So is Aaron Glenn hands off, or is he like diving in with Steve on the defensive side of the ball, or is he letting Steve Wilks handle everything?
Well, I think the intent coming into the year was let Steve call the defense, as somebody, and we've seen this over and over again, where a first-year head coach comes in and at least one of his key coordinator spots is somebody who, either has head coach experience or has extensive coordinator experience, or somebody that, is he won't really need to babysit and really need to worry about. And, obviously on the other side, like Tanner Engstrand is a first-year offensive coordinator. So adding a guy with Wilks' resume was, I think, very important, and I think on paper a smart decision. We just haven't seen any like positives really from this defense outside of, I would have told you, like, Quinnen Williams has been playing his ass off, but he's gone, so that doesn't matter. You look at the pass yards per game. The reason that's probably so low is just because, like, I don't know if you watch, teams aren't really throwing the ball much by the time we get to the fourth quarter half the time. But I will say too, like, there are weeks and there are moments where, like, the pass rush gets home, and we saw it like week 1 against the Steelers, and I know they still gave up 32 points or whatever it was, but like Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson were creating pressure and creating sacks and creating bad passes, but it just feels so hot and cold week in and week out. Like, you can't trust the pass rush to be consistent. And now, especially with Sauce gone, on the back end, we're talking about, like, Azareye'h Thomas, our third-round pick, is going to get his first start, or I should say just got his first start, is now going to be, like, a starting corner week in and week out now with Sauce gone. So, it's just, you've now taken, like, the two good parts of the defense are basically gone now, and so it's a great opportunity for somebody to step up. We'll see if that actually happens. But in terms of just in terms of Steve Wilks and what he's brought, I think it really just starts with not being able to set the tone up front with the defensive line as much as we've seen in other stops of his. When he was more successful in Carolina, for example. I think that's just been the issue, and then that's sort of been the catalyst for, busts in coverage and the linebackers, missing assignments and just issues that we've seen at the second and third level of the defense. So I think the defensive line is going to be, if the Jets struggle, it's probably because the defense is not creating pressure and getting stops in the run game and stuff like that.
Well, let's shift over to personnel. You mentioned Azareye'h Thomas stepping in for Sauce, which I like Azareye'h coming out of Florida State. But who's stepping in for Quinnen Williams? Who's next up to get those reps?
I mean, it's, we've seen it's been Harrison Phillips and Javon Briggs and Jay Tufele have sort of been the three other interior defensive linemen. They did just get Mozzie Smith. I'm not expecting him to. Well, I wouldn't expect him to do much days after being traded, and I'm also just not setting the highest bar for him in general. There's a reason Dallas just threw him in this trade. Sort of a pretty much a bust of a first round pick at this point. So we'll see. And like they've played, like Harrison Phillips has played well, I'd say, and Briggs has played well. Not to the level of Quinnen by any means, but I'm cautiously optimistic that they could hold their own on the interior, and be able to create some kind of ability for like Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson to create some kind of rush. that's kind of been the thing. Like Will McDonald has been the Jets' best pass rusher this season. The problem is he is not at all an asset in the run game, stopping the run. Like he's 240 pounds. Like he is a textbook definition of a designated pass rusher. So you want him out there to create pass rush, but then they just don't have the depth and the rotation of defensive ends and edge players that can be out there that you can rely on. So it's going to be tough sledding now without Quinnen, who you could just know basically would shut down, his side of the defensive line, and you wouldn't really have to worry about it. Now it's more of a question mark, and if the run lane's open, which we've seen Cleveland run the ball effectively with Quinshawn, if that opens up, now you're talking about a long day potentially with the Browns being able to run play action and again take advantage of a secondary that's also not that particularly strong at this point.
Will Campbell's tape coming out of Iowa State was some of the funnest. It was like you could see if you weaponize him as a pass rusher, but like you said, he's not going to give you much as a run defender. Well, we know about the trades you guys pulled off, but the word is on the street there were also some guys on the block who are still there, and one was benched this week, Quincy Williams. Do you think that was just, or do you think it's just like we have a better shot of losing if our best players aren't on the field? How do you view it?
I don't think it's just in the sense that if the thought process was we're going to bench him, because Quincy's he missed a couple games. He was out with an injury. I think it was a foot injury. And then he came back this past week against Cincinnati and played probably one of, if not his best game of the year so far. I think it was like 6 tackles, a couple pass breakups, had a tackle for loss. So like, it wasn't based on. I don't think it was based on the play this week. It feels like it was a decision made based on, again, like Aaron Glenn wants to get his guys on the field and wants to build the roster he wants. I'd expect to see a lot of Kiko Mauanoa, who was the Jets' 5th round pick this past year. But so I don't understand not trading him if you're gonna just bench him. Like that just feels like an odd decision to make. Because again, now especially like the Jets we're relying on a lot of rookies now. That's kind of the other thing that's creeping up here is, Azareye'h Thomas at corner, Malachi Moore is going to be safety. We're talking about Kiko Mauanoa at linebacker. Like the Jets defense it's quite a few rookies and also just really young in general. There's not a lot of veteran leadership, and Quincy's not even 30 either, but like at least somebody that is a vet and somebody that has years of experience and showed he played well with Robert Saleh when he was there. So I didn't understand that. I thought that was really confusing. Like, why not just ship him out? You're telling me like nobody would have offered. I mean, Logan Wilson got dealt to the Cowboys, so like you're telling me nobody else would have been in the market. I'm sure the Robert Saleh would have been banging the table to get Quincy back for his defense in San Fran. So I find it odd that he wasn't moved if ultimately the decision was just going to be benching him. Because, I mean, he's in a contract year. So if you're benching him, you're basically saying, like, we're moving on and we're not going to think about it, in my view.
Let's shift over to the other side of the ball, and let's just start at the head of it. The Justin Fields experiment. What do you make of it so far? And there's a lot of innocuous talk right now, whether it's going to be Justin or Tyrod. So where do you lean on who actually gets to start this week?
Yeah, it's just I feel like every position we talk about is just like, man, I don't like it. No, look, I think Justin Fields was put in a bad position. I don't think, like the weapons around him, other than Garrett Wilson, are not to a level that you would like, particularly at other wide receiver spots. That said, though, I don't think it was that terrible. That just some of the stuff we've seen from Justin Fields this year has been pretty disappointing, to say the least. The issue of holding the ball too long has been prominent multiple games this year. Missing open receivers and options. The fact that it took this long to get Mason Taylor more involved in the pass game feels, problematic.
I loved him coming out, by the way.
As did I. I genuinely, I think he's already the Jets' best weapon, best receiver, not named Garrett Wilson. And I kind of felt like he was already that when he was drafted. In terms of who should play, I think you've kind of, because Tyrod's not much either. When he was out there, like, he didn't play well either. So I think you just ride out Fields for the year. It's clear that, based on the trades, like, we're just going to hope to win a couple games this year, and that's fine. So hope that you can get one or two big games from Justin potentially this year, and build his confidence. Like, the stuff with Woody was just so annoying, and like, man, Woody Johnson is just always a pain in the ass every time the Jets are bad. Even when the Jets are good, he is. But that was obviously not fair to him at all. Just getting openly blamed for every problem the Jets have is not fair and not accurate. So I applaud that he still came out and, like, put together a hell of a game to sort of prove Woody wrong. I respect the hell out of that. So I'll give him his flowers there. But I think it's clear he's not a long-term quarterback option. That was, I guess, kind of the hope potentially coming into the year, is that you could find something with him and maybe, build around him. But that ship has sailed. So he's got one more year on his deal. We'll ride with him, going into next year. Maybe he starts and then we bring in the rookie quarterback if we have one. That's potentially a situation, but we'll see. Hopefully he can string together performances like he did last week, but that was against literally the worst defense in football. So we'll see. But I'm pretty much out on Fields as anything more than just, like, starter for the rest of the year.
Let's talk about the guy calling the plays, Tanner Engstrom. What has he shown you as far as a play caller, sequencing his scheme? And do you think he's shown enough to prove that he should be here next year to kind of, like, groom a rookie quarterback?
I've actually been a fan of Engstrom overall. I think I don't think the personnel is to his liking. It sort of reminds me, and obviously the quarterback situation's different, but it sort of reminds me of, like, Ben Johnson year one in Chicago, okay, where he kind of came in and obviously had Caleb, and that was why he took that job. But we saw he sort of started to implement his offense, but didn't have, like, all the guys he wanted. And then this past draft, they take Colston Loveland, they take Luther Burden, they take Kyle Monungai. Like, clearly, like, okay, we're going to build. They invested so much in the offensive line. Like, they went out in this past offseason and just completely overhauled basically everything around Caleb Williams. And we've sort of seen now Ben Johnson, I think, kind of come into his own in terms of running an offense that's sort of similar to what we saw when he was in Detroit. I think we're kind of in the stage of, like, Tanner doesn't quite have fully what he wants. Like, for example, I think Engstrom would want to run more 12 personnel than they do at this point, because right now your tight end options are, Mason Taylor, who I like and I think is a good football player and will be a really good football player. But then we're talking about Jeremy Ruckert, who's sort of a tight end 3 at best at this point. Stone Smart. We're not. There's no viable tight end two option that you'd feel great about. And again, that's not even talking about like, we traded for AD Mitchell. We'll see if he is any kind of wide receiver 2 or 3 option long term. But like, Alan Lazard and Arian Smith has just been such a bust of a draft pick that literally anyone could have seen coming. So I think like I hope we're going to see this offseason what we saw in Chicago, where like, because I think the offensive line is solid too. Like, you don't really need to mess with that too much. I like Fashanu and Membu at the tackle spots, but I think we're going to see a more of an investment in getting the pass catchers. And I mean, we'll see what happens with Brees, but like, if you need to make a change at running back, adding another quality tight end is probably useful too. Getting more of what Tanner Engstrand would have thought, what he had in Detroit, sort of emulating that more with the Jets roster, because I just don't think the roster's up to that. But in terms of like, I think the play calling has been good. I think if Fields was a quicker processor and a quicker throw of the ball, because you kind of did see it with Tyrod a bit, like there are guys getting open and guys being schemed open. I think Mason Taylor like would be a key part of the offense if there was a quarterback that consistently relied on him, but there are multiple times on tape where you see him open and able to make a play, and Justin just does not throw the football to him and opts for like either a covered Garrett Wilson or like one of these other receivers again that just isn't worth a damn at this point. So I actually have faith in Engstrand. I actually think he's done a good job as a year one offensive coordinator, even given all the Jets issues and the numbers are not going to reflect it. But I actually would feel kind of optimistic with a quarterback that he can develop.
So what matchups are your eyes going to be drawn to on Sunday?
I mean, I think the first one that comes to mind, last I saw, I think Schlesinger is questionable. So if he's out, can the Jets actually establish a run game against Cleveland? I don't know what Breece Hall's mindset is going to be after this week. He's another one that I really thought would have been moved. And he basically said, "Move me," and they didn't. So I don't know what he's gonna, how he's gonna play, and how many touches he's gonna get. But if the Jets, and I mean this feels like a Jets cliche at this point, but if the Jets can establish the run and force Cleveland to play in the box more, and then if they can take advantage of some Garrett one-on-ones, that would be ideal. I think also too, just we talked about it, but like how the defensive line is able to play and how they're going to now deal with the Browns rushing attack, which has actually played pretty well this year, it seems, with Judkins, and like now you don't have Quinnen, is Harrison Phillips, Javon Briggs, Jay Tufele, and Mozzie Smith. Like, is that enough of a interior presence to stop Quinshon Judkins and not let him run over you, basically? Because if he does, if the Browns run the ball down the Jets' throat and control the clock for most of the game, this Jets offense is just not built to come back from anything more than like a couple touchdowns at best. So I think if they get, like, if the Browns put up a 14-0 hole right out of the gate, it might be over before it even started. So we'll see. I think the defensive line for the Jets, how they play against this Browns offensive line, and how Breece Hall is able to potentially deal with a Schlesinger injury, and if he can break off some explosive runs. I think that'll be the keys to a Jets victory if we see one.
So now it's time for the uncomfortable part. What is your score prediction for Sunday's game?
Man, I was contemplating, do I come on here and really pick against the Jets? Am I really going to do that? I'm gonna have some faith that young guys can step up, and if they were playing the Chiefs, this is a blowout, and I don't think about it. But I'm gonna have some faith, and I'm gonna trust the process, and I'm gonna say the Jets can pull out a squeaker. I'm gonna go 23-20 Jets, barely, by some act of God, and Aaron Glenn gets to have a 2-game win streak.
Well, my brother, it's not going to take an act of God. I promise you that. This, to give you the hope that I can give you is this Browns defense is personnel wise nasty. They do not play the same on the road as they do at home. They just don't. At home, they're elite and they can lock pretty much anyone down. On the road, they're middle of the road. So unless they've figured out that code somehow over the last 2 years of the Jim Schwartz tenure, you're going to have a better shot. And if you're worried about Quinchon running over you, we lead the league in pass attempts somehow. I make it make sense. I can't do it. So they don't seem to want to make that their identity when it absolutely should be their identity. Mm-hmm. So we could play into your hands. But your score, you would take the over. Vegas has this as a 37.5 over under. Wow. So you're on the over.
I guess
I had to bet. We just don't score points. We just don't, And so I would probably lean under, but it is not going to shock me if the Browns leave MetLife with an L, just based on the way they've been playing on the road. So, All right. Well, let's get into it, man. What is your Mount Rushmore, the New York Jets?
So I've thought about this. In my opinion, I think there's 2 locks, and there's then 2 spots you can have a conversation.
Okay.
I think the locks for me are Joe Namath. I just think he's too
iconic.
Is he the greatest, most talented football player that's ever been a Jet? No. He's just too iconic. He's too symbolic of the franchise. Super Bowl III, the guarantee. Even now, like, he's still very much invested and part of Jets culture and Jets lore. So I think Joe Namath kind of is there by default until the Jets win another Super Bowl, and then maybe that quarterback takes his place. I think the other lock for me, Darrelle Revis is just, yeah. I think he's actually the greatest Jet to ever, like the greatest football player that was a Jet. His run of dominance, I mean, the 1 year, everybody shares the meme where he shut down like every amazing Hall of Fame wide receiver under the sun. There was no Reeves Island was legit, man. It was a true, just, you could put him on anyone and he will shut them down. And he was like the perfect fit for those Rex Ryan defenses when they went to back-to-back AFC title games, and at the height of Rex's powers as Jets head coach. Like, Revis was just the perfect player for that defense, and just obviously Hall of Famer. Like, he's just the greatest Jet in my opinion. From there, I think you can have a conversation. I think Curtis Martin comes to mind for a lot of people. God rest his soul, but like Nick Mangold, I think would have been even in that conversation. Like, I don't think his death, catapults him. Like, I still think he was in that conversation. If you go back, like, Don Maynard is in that conversation. Joe Klecko is sort of the guy you would probably take from the sack exchange of the 70s and 80s. So I'm going to lock in. I'm going to say Namath, Revis. I'm going to say Mangold, and I would take Joe Klecko because I do think those 80s defenses were legit as well. But honorable mention, Curtis Martin, and Don Maynard.
That's a hell of a list, man. Curtis Martin would probably make mine. Did Gastineau get any consideration over Klecko?
He could have. I think Klecko was just more consistent and more. I mean, Klecko's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And Gastineau's not. So I would probably take Klecko. But Gastineau's a great player in his own right too. So and Curtis Martin. Like if Jets fans included Curtis Martin, I wouldn't take any issue with it.
As consistent as you can find at the position, like that, he
Absolutely.
was just, you could bank on what he was going to be able to do for you. And I think we should highlight Nick Mangold and give condolences to his family and everything they've just went through. It was, I wasn't as aware of his condition until he came public with it. I don't know if Jets fans were aware prior to that, but that was such rapid succession. It was less than 2 weeks from him going public, asking for a kidney to no longer being with us. So shout out to Ohio State legend, New York Jets legend, and hopefully future Hall of Famer Nick Mangold.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anthony, you've been amazing. Thank you for your time and your insights. I think we definitely know the Jets better now than we did prior to this podcast. So let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, you can always find me on X at Anthony_Russo97. I've got a Substack, which you can find on my X bio, where I post a bunch of college football, NFL draft, NFL content in general. If you follow my X, you'll see probably a bunch of tweets about draft prospects, which I'm sure Cleveland Browns fans are starting to get interested in these days, as are Jets fans. So yeah, I got a bunch of stuff there, and I'm on the Draft Professor podcast. Usually, I wasn't on this week, but I'm usually on those Friday nights and Saturday mornings, and so you can find me there as well.
You heard it, guys. You know where to find him. Go find him. Check out his stuff. This draft's going to get interesting, and it's getting late awfully early as far as that goes for your. So head over, check out the draft content. And you guys, thank you so much for your time. Thank you. Every week you guys come and spend time with us. Hopefully you learn something out of it. But find us on all the socials. Anywhere there's a social, you will find us. Please do all the things, like, subscribe, all this. We appreciate it so much. It goes a long way for us to make more content, and that's our goal here. So thank you so much. Thank you for spending your Saturday evening with us. And as always, know thyself, know your enemy.